The military's operation that resulted in the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was a significant victory in the global fight against terrorism. Al-Baghdadi was the mastermind behind ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, a terrorist organization responsible for brutal acts of violence, territorial control across Iraq and Syria, and inspiring a global jihadist movement. The death of al-Baghdadi marked a crucial moment in the United States' efforts to dismantle ISIS and its leadership. This article will provide a detailed account of how the United States military located, targeted, and killed al-Baghdadi in 2019, as well as its broader implications for global counter-terrorism. Who was Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi? Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, born Ibrahim Awad. Ibrahim al-Badri in 1971 rose to prominence as the leader of ISIS, declaring himself the Caliph of the Islamic State in 2014. Under his leadership, ISIS grew into one of the most dangerous and well-funded terrorist organizations in modern history. It gained control of vast swathes of territory across Iraq and Syria, instilling fear through its brutal tactics, which included mass executions, beheadings, and terrorist attacks worldwide. Al-Baghdadi's rise to power within ISIS was aided by his ability to consolidate jihadist movements in the region and by exploiting the political instability in Iraq and Syria during the Syrian civil war. His announcement of a caliphate drew followers from all over the world, inspiring foreign fighters and lone wolf attackers to carry out acts of terrorism in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Al-Baghdadi became a prime target for global counter-terrorism operations, and his death was seen as essential to weakening ISIS's operational capabilities. Background of the operation. The raid that led to the killing of al-Baghdadi took place in the early hours of October 27, 2019, and was carried out by the United States military, primarily by the Elite Delta Force, a special operations unit tasked with high-profile and dangerous missions. The mission was codenamed Operation Kayla Mueller, in honor of an American humanitarian worker who had been taken hostage and killed by ISIS in 2015 under al-Baghdadi's orders. Planning and intelligence gathering. The success of the operation was the result of months of meticulous planning, coordination between various intelligence agencies, and cooperation with local and international allies. Intelligence agencies, including the CIA, had been tracking al-Baghdadi for years. In the months leading up to the raid, the United States received critical intelligence about his whereabouts from the Syrian Democratic Forces and other regional partners, including Iraq and Turkey. Al-Baghdadi had been on the run for years, constantly moving to evade capture. He had been hiding in a compound in the small village of Barisha in Syria's Idlib province, close to the Turkish border. Idlib had become a hub for various jihadist groups, making it a favorable hiding spot. The United States military monitored his movements closely and waited for the right opportunity to strike. The raid. How the US killed al-Baghdadi. The operation began late at night on October 26, 2019, with helicopters carrying elite Delta Force operators flying from Iraq into Syrian airspace. The helicopters involved were primarily MH-60 Black Hawks and CH-47 Chinooks, escorted by attack helicopters and drones to ensure air superiority and to provide surveillance and firepower if needed. When the US forces reached al-Baghdadi's compound, they encountered armed resistance from militants guarding the ISIS leader. However, the special forces, equipped with superior training, weaponry, and support from the air, quickly neutralized the threat. The Delta Force operators then approached the compound, breaching the walls with explosives to avoid potential booby traps at the entrance. The final moments of al-Baghdadi. Upon realizing that US forces had breached the compound, al-Baghdadi fled into a tunnel underneath the building, taking 3 of his children with him. As US forces pursued him, he reached a dead end in the tunnel. At this point, rather than surrender, al-Baghdadi detonated a suicide vest he was wearing, killing himself and his children. The explosion caused part of the tunnel to collapse, but US forces were able to retrieve the remains of al-Baghdadi for identification. The body was identified through DNA testing, which confirmed that it was indeed the ISIS leader. The identification process was rapid due to pre-existing DNA samples of al-Baghdadi, which the US had collected from his relatives. Aftermath and reactions. The immediate aftermath of the raid was a sense of relief and accomplishment from US officials and the international community. President Donald Trump announced the death of al-Baghdadi in a press conference on October 27, 2019, describing him as having died like a dog and emphasizing the significance of the mission in weakening ISIS. The removal of al-Baghdadi was a symbolic and operational blow to ISIS. While it did not mean the end of the group, it represented the elimination of its most significant and visible leader. His death created a power vacuum within ISIS, which struggled to find a figure of al-Baghdadi's stature to lead the organization. Implications for ISIS and global terrorism. Al-Baghdadi's death was undoubtedly a significant milestone in the fight against ISIS, but it did not signal the end of the organization. ISIS, at its height, was more than just al-Baghdadi. It had built a global network of affiliates, sleeper cells, and ideological followers. Even though al-Baghdadi's death weakened ISIS's leadership, the group's decentralized structure allowed it to continue operating in some form. In the months following al-Baghdadi's death, ISIS named his successor as Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi, though he did not possess the same influence or charisma as al-Baghdadi. ISIS still maintained a presence in Iraq, Syria, and parts of Africa, despite losing most of the territory it once controlled. The group's ideological influence also remained a concern as it continued to inspire lone wolf attacks around the world. Moreover, while the death of al-Baghdadi was a significant psychological blow to ISIS, it did not fully dismantle the group's operational capabilities. The US and its allies continued to conduct counter-terrorism operations to eliminate ISIS commanders and prevent the resurgence of the group. ISIS's ideology of violent jihadism, which al-Baghdadi had championed, persisted and remains a long-term challenge for global security. The operation to kill al-Baghdadi was a clear example of the importance of international cooperation in counter-terrorism efforts. The intelligence leading to his location came not only from US agencies but also from key regional players, including Kurdish forces, Iraq, and Turkey. This collaborative effort allowed the US military to execute the operation with precision and minimize casualties. Moreover, the raid also highlighted the effectiveness of US Special Operations Forces, such as Delta Force, which have been instrumental in high-profile missions, including the raid that killed Osama bin Laden in 2011. These elite forces have extensive experience in counter-terrorism operations, and their ability to plan, execute, and adapt to complex situations was crucial in the successful elimination of al-Baghdadi. Al-Baghdadi's death reinforced the US's broader counter-terrorism strategy of targeting high-value individuals within terrorist organizations. While eliminating key leaders does not completely dismantle these groups, it weakens their leadership and disrupts their operations. The US military and intelligence community have used this approach extensively in the Middle East, targeting leaders of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other jihadist groups. However, the raid also underscored the challenges of fully eradicating terrorist organizations like ISIS. While the death of al-Baghdadi was a major victory, ISIS's global network continues to pose a threat, particularly in regions like Africa and Southeast Asia. The group's ability to inspire attacks abroad, even without a central leader, means that counter-terrorism efforts must continue to evolve. The death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in a US military raid was a critical moment in the fight against global terrorism. Al-Baghdadi's elimination weakened ISIS's leadership and dealt a significant blow to the organization's operational capabilities. However, it did not mark the end of ISIS or the ideology of jihadism that continues to inspire violence worldwide. The operation demonstrated the importance of intelligence, international cooperation, and the capabilities of US Special Forces in counter-terrorism missions. It also highlighted the complex nature of the fight against ISIS and similar groups, which remain resilient despite the loss of key leaders. While al-Baghdadi's death was a victory for the US and its allies, the ongoing threat of ISIS and other jihadist organizations ensures that the fight against terrorism is far from over.